kick off here. Guys, if you have questions, please just raise your hands, or if there's any, if you raise your hand and we can come to you, or pop it into the Q&A box and I'll get to it. But for this particular presentation, it is really around your questions and us trying to answer them. But I've also put together a few slides on how you should tackle the application form itself to help you build it. Okay, so I'll kick off. So thank you all for attending this short seminar as part of the Health Innovation Hub Ireland's Clinical Innovation Awards. And this week's seminar is on building a case for commercialization support, and it'll be available on our website at www.hih.ie. Along with other supports such as interviews with representatives from Enterprise Ireland, University, and previous winners of similar awards. I'd like to thank Enterprise Ireland for sponsoring and supporting the Clinical Innovation Awards. Again, I'll reiterate that Health Innovation Hub Ireland and Enterprise Ireland recognise the value and insight of healthcare staff and their ability to see the solutions to problems or challenges in healthcare. And the Clinical Innovation Award is a programme to support those in healthcare who have an idea for a solution to address a major need in healthcare. Now, there's a stipulation in this that any of these applications have to be in partnership with the university, an institute of technology, or technical university through the technology transfer offices in those buildings. If you're unfamiliar with them, please see the last presentation, or if you have questions, you can ask me about it. But we do provide a matchmaking service to connect clinical personnel or those working in healthcare with the universities and the tech transfer offices, the IoTs, etc., and vice versa. If you're somebody working in academia and you'd like to connect with a clinical person in this area, we will try and facilitate that too. Okay. Emer, I'll ask you to let me know if there's any questions coming in. We can address them as we go. Okay, so building a case for commercialization support is what I'll cover today, and your Q&As. And I'd like to refer you to the questions application form itself and the instructions on it, because that's probably the best starting point, and that's available on the website just to download it. And we've also put together a how-to guide to help you develop a business case, sorry, not a business case, a case for commercialization support. Okay, so there's three key elements of bringing a solution to market, and they are to ensure that there's an unmet clinical need, a robust solution or solution direction, and that there is a market, that people are willing to pay for it, or that they're already paying to address the problem. And the first step before applying for support is to define and validate that unmet need to you intend to address. Okay, from here on, I'm just going to go via the application form itself. So the first section on the application form is around your solution. So it's briefly describe the innovation or technology solution, and it's a maximum of 1 page. So it's not long, so it should be dense, or at least have addressed what they're looking for, and they do expand on that. So provide a description of your innovation or technology solution and the clinical need it addresses. Describe the technology readiness level of your solution and outline the development pathway of your innovation or technology solution. This is the first section, but it's probably the last one you'll have to fill out, or you should fill out, for the following reasons. One is you need to make sure that there is a need for your solution in the first instance. You need to make sure that there's a market for your solution. You need to make sure that you're not reinventing the wheel. What is available already, you need to know what's out there and why your solution is better. And you need to understand the stakeholders and their pain points, as well as who the competitors are in the space. So I'll actually come back to this part at the end. Okay, so I'll skip straight on to section 2, the current solution. So it's fairly formulaic, really. So outline the advantages of your innovation or technology solution over existing methods or research. So you need to identify the competitor solutions, you need to detail the strengths and weaknesses of existing solutions, and you need to describe the advantages of your proposed innovation or technology solution. So what are the current solutions? Cool. In some cases, there may not be a current solution, but that's extremely rare. Like that's almost a red flag if you say there are no solutions. Um, that you need to put something in there. So let's say you face a problem in your own work or in a clinic, or you're looking at a need. The current solutions, what's being done at the moment to address that, and it's important to search as well online or yeah, in the library or wherever, to see how that same problem is being addressed, say, okay, locally, where you are, nationally and internationally. And there may be solutions out there that you're unaware of. Google is your friend for this part, really. The current solutions should include all kind of common methods, both direct and indirect, currently in use to solve the unmet need or problem. And a direct comparison or competitor would be something that's doing exactly the same as what you're doing, and an indirect comparison, it gets the same result, but it does it differently. So there may be different ways to treat a condition, like medication or physiotherapy or medical device or some sort of digital intervention. They'd all be two medications would be in direct competition, whereas medication and a therapy such as physiotherapy will be indirect. Okay, so once you've identified the current solutions, you can then expand on why the current solutions are, that you've researched are not fit for purpose, right? And this provides two functions. First, it fits in. The first really is that you're going to look at the disadvantages of the current solutions, and the second is that it'll then identify the gap where a new solution or your solution can or should fit. And it's extremely important to identify the critical success factors that are most relevant. And in the early stage, they shouldn't be technical or clinical factors. They need to be stuff that makes sense to most lay people. And like this table here that I've put up, this can be used to illustrate your point. So you list the competitors on one side there, and then the solution, the success factors on the other, and then you can compare them. So now you can start to fill out the information on the solutions based on your own kind of research. Are they expensive or cheap? Are they easy to use or intuitive? Are they efficient? Do they speed up the process or delay it? Are they effective? Do they do what they're supposed to do? Are they sustainable or environmentally friendly or reusable? And can it scale to other procedures, hospitals, workflows, countries, etc.? You know, is this something that only works in this one area, or can it be something that'll work in multiple areas? And another really important point to consider is when your solution would fit into addressing a condition or a problem. Like, for example, the old adage is prevention is better than cure. So where do the current solutions address the condition or problem, and where in that timeline, or when in that timeline will yours? Will you address something before it becomes a problem, which is much better than, say, something that supports aftercare? Because if you can stop something becoming a problem, where maybe you stop somebody from going to surgery, then you cut out the need for surgery and any follow-up interventions or solutions that assist with the recovery process. So you've kind of killed off those markets. So you'd be far, far more competitive. Then you can color it in. It just makes it visually a little bit easier to see. If you see a lot of red, you know they're not good. So some solutions are stronger than others, and for different reasons. And the same goes that some solutions are weaker than others. Okay, and this gives you a visual representation of the whole shebang. Right. So now you've kind of you've addressed the questions in section 2. And moving on then to section 3. So you need to outline the commercial opportunity for this innovation technology solution and who will benefit from it. So to kind of break that down again, it's short, it's one page. So there's a lot of information going into this one page. What is the clinical problem that needs to be solved? What is the incidence and scale of the problem in Europe, USA, and worldwide? Enterprise Ireland, who are sponsoring this, will always be looking at the global market. So you need to think big, I suppose. Who are the customers and end users of the proposed innovation, technology, or solution? So customers are different to the end users, and we'll get to that in a second, most of the time anyway. Outline the novelty of your innovation based on patent and literature searches. Don't panic, I'll talk about that very quickly in a minute. So in terms of the clinical need or the problem, like, is this problem, excuse me, specific to you? Are you the only one who has noticed the issue? Have you Googled the problem? It may already be addressed. And here's some of the steps to follow in the first instance. What is the clinical impact of the problem? Okay, so you can Google this and look at the data from sites like the WHO, the CDC in the US, the HSE here, or the NHS in the UK, and other general and specific reputable websites in the area of interest. They can tell you how many people suffer from diabetes worldwide or in a country. And you can look at academic publications as well, particularly in the abstracts and the introduction sections to get information. You may not have to deep dive into the whole thing just to get the size of the problem from a clinical perspective. And there are many different journals relevant to each disease type and in different geographical locations. So how many people or patients are affected by it locally? You might be able to figure that out quite quickly if you are working in healthcare, nationally or at a global level. Is it one person per 100,000, or is it of the population, or is it 1 per 1,000 of the population that are affected by it? 1 per 100,000 is an okay market size. 1 per 1,000 is a huge market size. What do your colleagues think of the problem? You don't have to tell them the solution, you just need to talk to people about the problem. And if you're not in healthcare, then it's about talking to healthcare professionals about the problem to get their opinion on it. And when speaking to people in healthcare, whether you're colleagues or not, you can find out what you don't go at them directly about, well, do you think X is a big problem? You kind of ask them what the 5 biggest challenges or pain points they come across in relation to their daily work, and see what they say. And if the problem you've identified is one of their top 5, brilliant, just you can press that, why is that a problem, etc. And if it isn't, then why isn't it? Maybe it isn't a problem. And there's a book called The Mom Test by a guy called Rob Fitzpatrick, and it's short and it covers that technique of getting information from people, not interrogating them or anything, but in a way that you're not providing leading questions. Particularly if you're speaking to key opinion leaders or people who don't know you, you don't want to bias them because they might just tell you something nice to get you to go away. And it's called the mom test really because mothers almost always tell you that your idea is great, and you don't want that. You want an objective opinion from people, or their objective thoughts on what the problem is. Okay. The next one then is the stakeholders and customers. So stakeholders are probably the most important factor in identifying clinical need or problem. The stakeholders are the ones that will want your solution. They're the ones that understand the solution, and they'll understand what the solution will do for them or for the patient or for whomever. Most clinical innovators at the beginning, most innovators really, particularly in healthcare, believe the main stakeholders to be the clinical team and the patient. And you're right, of course, these are the main stakeholders who are directly engaging with whatever the therapy or solution is. However, it's really the clinical team or the patient who will pay for the solution. So it's critical to the survival of any idea to identify all the relevant stakeholders and to understand what the problem means to them. These are usually called pain points. That's the term that'll be thrown around a lot. And knowing a stakeholder's pain point is key to understanding how to kind of pitch your idea or sell your idea. In this case, write an application around your idea. And this will get you support for the development of that idea if it speaks to the stakeholders' needs. Right now, if you're talking to Enterprise Ireland, you want to get funding from them. And that is, it makes sense to them in the way that they look at the world, and they will be looking at it from a commercial perspective as well. So they want to know who the payers are. So it's really important to identify who pay for the solutions, and what their pain points are, and how your solution will address those pain points. Novelty then, so this is the bit on patents and that. So very quickly, novelty means how your solution is unique compared to other solutions, and this requires that you do a Google patent search at a minimum. And if you're considering developing anything novel, you should look at the patents in that space and try and get specific in what you're googling. This may seem daunting, but it is fairly straightforward at the initial phase. They don't expect you to have completed a full IP screen or freedom to operate or whatever it is. They just want you to know that you're not straight away reinventing the wheel. And this is one I just put in earlier just to give you a quick idea. I don't know if you can see the cursor here yet. So I just put in flying car, and you can get very quickly, you can have a look at the abstract. There's a bunch of these things. People have filed patents on flying cars. What you need to look at is when it was filed, its status. Is it nearly expired or whatever it is? And if it is going to expire, when is that? Because they only have a shelf life of 20 years if they are approved. And then the next thing, if it is in date and if it's close to what you're doing, then you just go to the next stage. Kind of it's all on the same page. You just look at the description of it. Does it make sense? Like, is it exactly what you're describing, or is it different? And then what claims do it make? So this was basically in this first section, they describe a car, and then they go on to talk about putting propellers on it and stuff like that. So, are you going to be significantly different in your thing? I picked something quite generic here, so that I'm not biasing you in terms of talking about a medical device, but you get the idea. Okay, you'll also need to see what new technologies are out there, and you can do this with a bit of Googling as well. So just look at the academic research, like what research is being conducted in universities or the institutes of technologies or the technical universities, kind of around you, or globally. Like, you can find out who's leading in a particular area that you're interested in if you're developing technology or a medical device or something. You can see if any of the universities are working in that space. There's also a bunch of Science Foundation Ireland research centres, Enterprise Ireland technology gateways, all that sort of stuff. They have profiles of people up there and their expertise, so you can see what they're doing and if they're directly in that space. It's also a good place to go to find or look for partners for developing solutions. So you can also look to see where the money is going. So where the current investments happening. So you can look at kind of, I suppose, particular journals in the areas that are relevant to you, like say maybe the Financial Times or medtech. Honestly, the best thing to do is to Google what it is you're interested in and type the word investments after it, and you'll see if there's money moving into it. So you can see what the current investments are and the players in the field. And then again, conferences. There can be conferences happening. Now, you don't have to go too deep into it, but you need to do some of it to get an idea for your application. Again, the application is so short that you like one line on all of these is probably get you the entire application completed, but just you need it to contain the relevant information. Okay, so the cost of the problem is really how much money is spent every year on addressing or tackling the problem. And now for this level, again, it's a Google search. So something like, for example, here it's 5.9 billion was spent in 2019 on the global coronary stent market. That was Google. That was up there as a market report. Diabetes monitoring, treatment, and drug delivery market in the US is whatever it is, 15.7 million, and in the EU it's 15.7 billion, and in the EU it's 9 billion. And the global market for hemodialysis is 71 billion. Now, all of those can be further divided into their segments for each market. So it's not the entire, maybe you're looking at something for diabetes, maybe it's a new monitor. So it's not the entire monitoring, treatment, and drug delivery market you should be looking at. That's the total addressable market. You move into what segment of that is dedicated to monitoring, and it might be 20%. So then you know how much is spent in that space, and then that can be broken down geographically. So of that 20%, 5% is the US, and 5% is Europe, and 10% is the rest of the world. Okay, if it's something where you can't find these numbers, you can do the reverse. In the reverse order, you can, if it's somebody coming in for treatment in one particular area, you're working in healthcare or not, you can find out how much it costs to treat one patient, and then you can kind of expand that out by the amount of patients you might see a week, a month, a year, or kind of the national figures. You can figure it out, and you're also in a position then. Here we are. We know how much it costs. The salaries of each person who might work on seeing a patient, and also the costs of if somebody's staying in hospital, how much bed days it will the cost of a bed day, etc. So you can calculate really how much it is going to cost and build it up that way. So you can come at it from two sides. Okay, back to section one. Then you've done a lot of groundwork there to give Enterprise Ireland what they're looking for in terms of the problem, the size of the markets, all that sort of stuff. So instead of come back to your solution now, you've looked at all the things why your solution would be, why it needs a solution. So what is your solution? So they want you to briefly describe your innovation technology solution. Again, maximum of 1 page, but it must also include a description of your innovation technology solution and the clinical need it addresses. And you need to describe the technology readiness level, and you need to outline the development pathway for your innovation technology solution. Right? So once you've completed all that work from earlier, you're in a much better position to describe your solution in the context of the application. So the technical side of your product should make sense, as in like it's grounded in reality now. You know what's out there, so yours is going to be similar or better than what's there, but also it is technology that exists to some extent. You're not creating something science fiction or that there is some precursor to it, or it could be using technology from a different area and bringing it into healthcare. This award is really a precursor for a much larger fund to help you develop that technology. So when you get there, you have you kind of have the technology direction, or at least some idea of what it will be, and then you get the further funding then to build it out. Okay, the technology readiness level, and it's to do with the amount of technical work that the product has gone through, and there's a scale. It's 1 to 9, with 1 being an idea, and you may have some work completed on a prototype, and you may not. That's fine. And there's a link to the technology readiness levels in the how-to guide, I think on the application form as well, actually. And this competition is open to all levels of readiness, like including the idea, your level 1 and your level 2. So don't let it put you off, but try and understand where yours fit. You can't say I have a working prototype if you haven't gone through the steps. I think a prototype might be a TRL 5 or 6, so you need to make sure you have the other work completed first. And then I'd shown this earlier, but now I've put in your solution here, and in context. Well, with sitting there with all the other ones, it looks far better. So what you have effectively done now is you're showing in this table how the advantages of your solution over the competitors. And you wouldn't have been able to do that without doing the competitor analysis. You've also kind of identified the gap where your solution would fit, and that it would be compelling to the users, and it would be very competitive in the space. It doesn't have to all be green across the board, but 4 greens are better. It has to be. It has to make sense. Okay, this will be available on our website anyway. We're finished. Okay, so the development pathway, and I think I'm nearly finished then. This requires a little bit of consideration from your perspective, as you need to understand what it would require to bring your solution forward. So intellectual property is one. The technology transfer offices can help you with that. You also need to do that kind of early stage patent search to make sure that you're not going to be infringing on patents, just so that you have an idea you're not reinventing the wheel. But your intellectual property is what you will create, and there are ways and means to protect that. But you need to understand that your development pathway will include a way of protecting your ideas. That's your intellectual property strategy. The next one then will be regulatory considerations. If you are developing something for healthcare, it may very well be a medical device. It would probably have to be certified or authorized for use in the market. And if so, what kind of medical device is it? Have a look at similar ones that are out there and see what classification they have. There's 3 classifications, 1, 2, and 3, with 1 being kind of the lowest entry, things like plasters and that sort of stuff, with 3 being, a drug-eluting heart stent or something fairly invasive. So you can see in around where yours would fit, and all three of those would have different, well, they build on each other, the amount of work you have to do, where class ones can be fairly straightforward, to be honest, whereas class three would require clinical trials, etc. A reimbursement strategy is understanding how things are paid for by healthcare systems, and where you would fit into that, how you would get your product to market, and what reimbursement strategy you would use. Um, so it's understanding that you require, a strategy around this. The development then is another thing. So it will require some technical development and some clinical probably development as well. So how do you get it from an idea to a prototype, to testing that prototype? And some tests that you will do will be specific to meet the regulatory requirements as well. So it kind of, you wouldn't do it independently. You'd want to do it with the bigger picture in mind. You need to have a team as well. You need to build a team going forward. You may be an engineer, or you may be a healthcare professional. You probably need both on your team, or you might need a scientist, etc. You will absolutely and should have some network of advisors around you as well. They're not part of the company, but they're the team, but they're people who've gone through this before and who are willing to give you some advice. And you'll also need an idea around a business strategy. And there's on the how-to guide, there's a link there to the business model canvas, which should help you kind of flesh out to see, early doors, what the business should or could look like going forward. And if you want any help on any of that, just give us a shout or get in touch. Okay, so the last part really is what will you use the funding for? And I think the application form itself kind of gives you hints on in terms of what it should be. Actually, it straight up says the award will enable the applicant to engage relevant external experts or consultants to scope out the commercial case of their proposed innovation or technology solution. Okay, the award can also fund a small demonstration model or early prototype up to the maximum value of 5,000. So you want to get a consultant on board to do the market analysis. But what do they do in that? And you also have some funding there to do some prototyping or early development. So the market analysis is to identify the commercial opportunity for the innovation or technology solution. Universities will know these people who do this work, and as the funds go into the university, that's where it's housed as a budget, then you would engage with these people that are on their suppliers list to scope out the work. You would engage with potential customers, end users, or this market person would, and industries and other relevant stakeholders to really flesh it out and make sure you're pointing in the right direction, that the need is there. This will go international as well. You want to profile emerging and existing competitor landscape for the innovation or technology solution. You will have done some of this work, but not to the extent that the market person will do. So ultimately, when you meet that person, you'll be able to say, I've looked in these areas, this needs further research, this is completely different, don't go near that. And you want to look at the patent landscape, and again, the IP strategy. So as I said, you need to have an idea what that might be, but only an idea, and then this will really draw that out. You don't have to, you don't have to do this. You're only informing, you're directing where this person needs to look, and the report that will come back will really shed light on all these real tangible areas, and then the best way forward for them. And you need to understand the regulatory issues or other barriers or hurdles to commercialization. And we covered a little bit about the regulatory stuff there a few minutes ago. Okay, so yeah, if you can link in with an academic institution, it would be very important, or vice versa. To help move an idea forward. Of course, the lead applicant has to be a clinical person for the applicant. And then I was going to go through a couple of examples, but I'm just looking at the clock here, so I think I will just open it up to questions now. And we will have past winners coming on in the next few weeks to speak about their experiences, their journeys. So they'll be able to go through the actual experience and give real tangible examples. So it's Helen and Emily. So there are contact details for this. For contacting with us, whether you're based in Galway or in whichever is your closest hub, I guess, Galway, Dublin, or Cork, or just visit the website www.hih.ie.